Good evening, Namaskar, to all poetry lovers and poets across the world who are tuned in with us today, the 9th day of Kritya International Poetry Festival 2021. The language of poetry is the powerful sister of dream language. From the analysis of many dreams, as well as sacred texts and works of mystics as Rumi and poets as Dickinson, there appears to be within the psyche a poetry making function that arises when a person ventures near one's instinctive goal. Today, we have with us a stellar gathering of some of the finest poets of our times who have been kind enough to join us from their respective continents and time zones. We call upon our guest poets, Arundhati Subramanian from India, Sujata Bhatt from Germany, Paul Catafago from the United States of America, Ming Di from China, Víctor Rodríguez Nunes from Cuba, Shelly Bhoil from Brazil, and of course, Mkiva Zolani and Katharina Sarika joining us later on. Now I invite Rati Saxena ji, the festival director, to share a few. Now I invite festival director Rati Saxena ji to join us to say a few words.
Namaskar. Welcome to Kritya 2005, an international poetry festival which was started in 2005. It was the first nomadic poetry festival because we used to go to different states and different languages. Because India has 28 languages, we used to go to different languages. We used to travel with our poets to different states. It was also a poetry therapeutic festival where we don't like to sit on the stage and talk about poetry to an audience who belong to a high class, but we used to go to villages, hospitals, prisons, and old age homes, orphanage, colleges, schools, and many places. That is how we handle poetry. In this pandemic time also, Kritya wanted to use poetry as therapy. In 2020 pandemic time, we had a poetry festival for 10 days, which we have run with the video only. But then we feel that it is too artificial. After that, we had 3 days Central America Poetry Festival, and then 75 poetry Kritya talks, in which we talk to dancers, musicians, singers, historians, and many other, even for the politics and history and geographical things also. This pandemic was very hard hit to India. We have many wounds in our heart. Moreover, we see the war around us, which is very painful. And we wanted to use poetry again as a therapy. And that is why we are here with you, all great poets. This is the 9th day. We have 20 sessions, and this is the 9th day. And today's 2nd session. We have poets from all over the world. Like we have Paul, who is from Palestine mainly, and he lives in America. The Víctor, who is from Cuba, but he lives in America. Same way that Ming Di is an old friend of us from China, but lives in America. And now the Arundhati is also from my neighboring state, but she is right now in America. And Sujata Bhatt in Germany, she also had roots in India. Shelley, who lives in Brazil and lives in Uh, she belongs to India but lives in Brazil. We have two more poets who should join because in a later time, because it takes some time to get the link, etc. And Smitha Sehgal, a very smart poet and advocate. She is a government office advocate, is a big thing in India, is running this session. So welcome to Smitha. Welcome to you all poets. Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. As we now enter the beautiful evening in our continent, Indian subcontinent, we call upon Arundhati Subramaniam. Arundhati is a leading Indian poet and author of 12 books of poetry and prose, most recently, Love Without a Story. And she's a unique poet of our times in a league all by herself. She's the recipient of the Sahitya Academy Award 2020, the inaugural Khushwant Singh Prize, the Raza Award for Poetry, and the Mystic Kalinga Award and the Homi Bhabha and Charles Wallace Fellowships, amongst others. Some of her other books include the best-selling spiritual biography Sadguru, More Than a Life, the Book of Buddha, and the acclaimed Penguin anthology of sacred poetry, Eating God, which is also a personal favorite of mine. She has worked over the years as a performing arts curator, critic, and poetry editor. Welcome, Arundhati ji.
Thank you. Thank you, Smitha. And congratulations, Rati, to you and your team. I know the odds against which this festival is happening. And I just want to congratulate you for enduring over the years and soldiering on. I know that the theme for this particular festival is peace. And I've tried to think of poems that might address it, but as always, poetry is not something that's going to address it full frontal as much as tangentially. So I thought I'd read 3 or perhaps 4 poems. The first from my earliest book, a poem about the last time that I saw my grandparents together. And it becomes a reflection also on differing points of view and yet ways of converging. Winter, Delhi, 1997. My grandparents, in January, on a garden swing, discuss old friends from Rangoon, chrysanthemums, the parliamentary session, and electricity bill. In the shadows, I eavesdrop, 8th grandchild, peripheral, half forgotten, enveloped carelessly by the great winter shawl of their affection. Our dissensions are ceremonial. I growl obligingly when he speaks of a Hindu nation. He waves a dismissive hand when I threaten romance with a Pakistani cricketer. But there is more that connects us than speech flavored with the tartness of old curd that links me fleetingly to her, and a blurry outline of nose that links me to him, and there is more that connects us than their daughter who birthed me. I ask for no more. Irreplaceable, I belong here like I never will again. My credentials never in question. My tertiary nook in a gnarled family tree, non-negotiable. And we both know they will never need me as much as I, them. The inequality is comforting. And with that, I'd like to move to a poem from my second collection called The Same Questions. And it circles this essential preoccupation of disarmament, a word that we use so often. And what does that really mean? Again and again, the same questions, my love. Those that confront us and vex nations, or so they claim. How to disarm? When we still hear the rattle of saber, the hiss of tire from the time that I rode my red cycle all those summers ago in my grandmother's back garden, over darting currents of millipede, watching them, juicy, bulging with purpose, flatten in moments into a few hectic streaks of slime. How to disarm, how to choose mothwing over metal, underbelly over claw, how to reveal raw white nerve fiber, even while the drowsing mind still clutches at carapace and fang. How to believe this gift of inner wrist will make it just a little easier for a whale to sing again in a distant ocean, or a grasshopper to dream in some sun-warmed lull of savannah. And I'm going to move to a poem from my most recent book, Love Without a Story. And it's a poem called Mitti, which in Hindi means earth. And it's a reflection on what it really means to inhabit the earth at this point in time, but it's also a reflection on language and poetry. Mitti. As a child, I ate mud. It tasted of grit and peat and wild churning and something else that I could never quite find a name for. Later, I became a moon gazer, always squinting through windows, believing that freedom was aerial, until I figured that the moon was a likely mud gazer, longing for the thick sludge of gravity, the promiscuous thrill of touch, the license to make, to break, to remake. And so I uncovered the old language of poets, to be messengers between moon and mud. And I began to uncover the many languages of earth that have nothing to do with nations and atlases, and everything to do with the ways of earwigs, the pilgrim trail of roots, the great longing of life to hold and be held, and the irrepressible human love of naming. Ooze, mire, manure, humus, dirt, silt, mold, loam, soil, slush, clay, shit, mann, matope, baro, tinen, ni, luto, fango, all have their place, I found, in the democracy of tongues, none superior, none untranslatable, all reminders of the anthem of muck of which we are made. Except when June clouds capsize over an Arabian sea and a sleeping city awakens to an ache so singular that for just a moment it could have no name. Other than that, where sound meets sense and a slop of matter meets a slick lunatic wetness, mitti. Just that. Nothing else will do. I think I'll stop there. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to the other poets.
Thank you, Arundhati ji. You had us spellbound as always.
Thank you.
Delving deep into the adolescent memories of a threatened romance with Pakistani cricketer, or the memories of mud, the peat, the wild. Thank you, ma'am. We now call upon Sujata Bhatt from Germany. Sujata Bhatt is an Indian poet who lives in Germany. Her work has been widely anthologized, broadcast on radio and television, and has been translated to more than 20 languages. She is the recipient of various awards, including the Commonwealth Poetry Prize. She has published 6 collections of poems, including Monkey Shadows and Orogato, Color for Solitude, which deals exclusively with the life and work of German painter Paula Modersohn-Becker. Her 2008 collection, Pure Lizard was shortlisted for 2008 Forward Poetry Prize for Best Poetry Collection of the Year. She has translated Gujarati poetry into English for Penguin Anthology and has also translated poems by Günter Grass and Gunter Kunert. Her translation from the German by short prose by Michael Augustin was published in 2007. Sujata ji, welcome please.
Hello, thank you. Thank you to Rati and to all of you for making this festival possible. I see you have read the biodata, which is a bit out of date. I had sent a more recent one. But anyways, I've also lived for many, many years in the United States, and Germany is the third country in which I am living now. I've published 9 collections of poetry so far. I'm going to read a few poems connected with Paul Klee, the artist, the Swiss-German artist who lived from 1879 to 1940. Maybe some of you are aware of him. This one is called Paul Klee's House, Dessau. The spiders have chosen the most beautiful room, and now they're here to stay. You may not see them, but they have already found their favorite corner. High up on the ceiling where it's always dark, high up where they can always hide, the walls around them painted in shades of violet blue, violet pink, and gray.
And more contagious than any other variant currently.
Go on. Sorry? The walls around them in painted shades of violet blue, violet pink, and gray. I see shades of blue-gray, blue lavender, a hint of aubergine, dusty brownish pale pink, and subdued violet. I think of a garden in summer dusk, birdsong after rain. Shadows deepen across hortensia, larkspur. Hushed voices rise and fall with a gentle intensity. Shadows darken as the moon contradicts the wind. South of the river Elbe, east of the Elbe lives the hooded crow, west of the Elbe, the carrion crow. I have traveled from east to west and back again from west to east. I have traveled endlessly. All morning I watched these hooded crows, how slender they are, how elegant beneath the tall pine trees. The pine trees are also slender, and the wind makes them sway easily. Sometimes it seems as if that is all they want to do, just sway from side to side while the crows flick through pine needles and grass. I can watch the light for days, how it moves between the crows and the trees. My mind wanders. The hooded crows take me back to Marinagar, the pine trees to Maine. Now this poem could go almost anywhere. A spider's web. Paul Klee, Spinnennetz, 1927. The poem refers to a painting by Paul Klee. A spider's web has taken over the night. Imagine a spider's web across the vastness of night. Silence has come to rest here as if it were one of the angels. Can we banish the unspeakable? Can we keep the unheard of unheard? What I mean by silence is the absence of human sound, the absence of any sound made by humans. And yet a certain non-silence grows out of this silence. Don't we always listen for something? What do we listen for when we seek out silence? In the distance, pine trees are tiny, or have they shrunk? It's a distance that comes closer and closer to us. Imagine you can hear a soul calling out to the universe, perhaps the soul of a bird or the soul of a tree. And now, sunrise, moonset, young saplings, darkest brown earth, dawn shadows, pine green shadows. Patches of pine green cover the ground, stain the freedom of pine cones, fertility within decay. So much is hidden, so much waits to be seen, the dreams of pine needles stolen by birds. Everything is itself and more, and the sky, not to be outdone, summons the wind, scatters clouds, spills morning blue everywhere. The spider is here, somewhere in the grass. The spider hides between blades of grass, while its freshly made web remains untouched, taut yet supple against the slightest breeze. Amber light falls across the tiny trees, the saplings. Amber light, rich with September, seeps through the spider silk. Moments of equilibrium, moments of suspense, as the equinox hovers on the horizon. It was simply the movement of what I call silence, a gesture that reminded me of an angel. Does that already conjure an angel for you? Everything is connected to everything. Everything grows into something else. Fine lines depicting the sun's rays, just like the lines depicting pine needles, just like the lines creating the spider's web, just like the lines that could reveal the spider we do not see, the spider we can only imagine. Sometimes words dissolve into sounds. Sometimes words dissolve into sounds, and sounds begin to inhabit colors, while colors want to grow into fish or birds. Often when Paul Klee worked in his beloved atelier in Dessau, amidst pine trees, he would play the violin for hours before beginning a new painting. Mozart was one of his favorites. He kept the door locked. The cat was his only listener. Thank you.
Thank you, Sujata ji. Thank you for having us enthralled with the imagery, the words dissolving to sounds and sounds beginning to inhabit colors. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We now call upon our next poet, Paul Catafago. Paul is a spoken word poet and cultural organizer, born and raised in New York City. Paul's work is deeply influenced by the fact that his parents were political refugees from Lebanon and his father was born in Palestine. He is very much interested in the advocacy of refugees and the indigenous. A former human rights journalist, Paul founded an arts non-profit that created projects that promoted cultural understanding in the New York after September 11. Since 2014, he has lived in New Orleans, Louisiana, where he is director of Mosaic Culture Project, which continues to be his lifelong work of building bridges between people. All. We welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Rati. Thank you, Smitha. Thank you, this illustrious group of poets. Victor and I are Facebook friends, which is weird. And for a spoken word poet to be now on television, because when we do the poem and really spoken word is indigenous to the Arab form of it's oral tradition. So when we do a poem, it's not just the words, but it's the body and everything. So this is a very humbling and disciplining form. And I just want to say something very quickly. Whatever, and I know we all have solidarity, and I hope with each other, and specifically now with India and Palestine and Cuba, and everything that's happening in the world. But our people, my father's people, the Palestinian people, almost immediately after our catastrophe in 1948, a form of poetry arose called Palestinian resistance poetry. Many poets around the world know Mahmoud Darwish because of the translations, but almost every single Palestinian poet started writing about the land and how the land was really taken from us. So I'm in that tradition, both in the spoken word and also Palestinian resistance poetry. So thank you again, and I'll stop talking and start reciting poetry. Thank you. Butterfly in hand. The bird in your hand is a caterpillar. It can be a butterfly if you let it. If you let it, it can be a butterfly, or it can be a gun. Yesterday, a refugee returned home after 20 years away. Yesterday, you smiled at a stranger and changed the world forever. The bird in your hand is a caterpillar. It can be a butterfly if you let it. If you let it, it can be a butterfly. This next poem, I bring it out every time I have a friend or a great poet who dies. And recently, many poets like Lawrence Ferlinghetti. So this was specifically written after Lawrence Ferlinghetti died. From Lawrence Ferlinghetti, for Lawrence Ferlinghetti, 1919 to 2021, written February 23rd, 2021. When a poet dies, the whole world mourns. The peoples recite the poet's words in the streets, from San Francisco to Senegal. Children dance to songs the poet wrote. Young rappers in ciphers in Washington, D.C. and Paris freestyle in honor of the poet when a poet dies. The poet's first love, now an old widow in Coney Island in Brooklyn, looks out to the Atlantic and cries. Talmudic students in Warsaw sit Shiva and recite Kaddish when a poet dies. The bells of St. Peter's in Rome ring out. Monks in Lhasa begin to fast. Yogis in Varanasi enter sacred postures. Pilgrims make ablutions in the Ganges. Sufis perform zikr in Cairo, and a sparrow flies north when a poet dies. A girl in Baghdad plants a rose bush and recites the poet's poems in Arabic, and another girl in Tokyo does the same in Japanese. When a poet dies, the whole world mourns. This last poem is called I Am the Exile. I am the exile. I have no home, just the memory of an undiscovered country. I am the exile, rejected by the world, comfortable in my skin, alone with my lover and the fading memory of a country I must soon forget. I am the exile, guided by the rising sun, the moon, the wind. I am the exile, constantly embodying stranger in a strange land. I am the refugee, the African, the Cuban, the Jew, the Korean, the Chinese, the Vietnamese, the Central American, the Indian Muslim, the Kurd, and the Gypsy. I am the Afghani, I am the exile. I am the immigrant. I am the refugee. I leave always because I am forced to, because there is no justice in the world. I am condemned as the other. I am the unclean, judged as an unbeliever, a criminal, because they think I am different than you. My belief is in the one world created by the one true creator. Apart from hypocrisy, I am the exile. The sky is my roof, the earth my carpet. I see no walls, and doors are only to be entered and never shut. I am the exile. I am you, because though you may not see it, we are all exiles here. I am the exile. Abraham is my father. I will travel anywhere, anytime, for the well-being of my people, with a distant whispered voice in the wind as my guide. I am the exile. I am the exile, with no home of my own, except the world where we all reside. I am the exile, and so are you. So I wanted to say recently the strangeness of Facebook, and I guess you would call me like old school, that recently in the last year, three distant cousins of mine have reached out on Facebook from the Palestinian side of our family, and one is an author who's written 2 books about our ancestors, and he has a line, because a lot of people think our name is Italian, but it's actually like 200 years old. And this cousin has a line in his book, and he says about our ancestor who came to Palestine. He says, "I am from everywhere, and I am from nowhere." So thank you again. It's been a great honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. You revved up the audience. I'm honored to read 2 translations of Paul Catafago's poetry. The first poem, Haath Mein Titli, the translation by Kinshu Gupta. जो चिड़िया तुम्हारे हाथ में है वह एक टिड्डा है, वह बन सकती है तितली अगर तुम छोड़ दो उसे, अगर तुम छोड़ दो उसे वह बन सकती है तितली या हो सकती है बंदूक। कल एक शरणार्थी घर लौट आया 20 साल बाद, कल तब तुम मुस्कुराए देखकर एक अजनबी को और हमेशा के लिए बदल दी दुनिया। The second poem for Lawrence Ferlinghetti. The translation is by Kinshu Gupta. जब एक कवि मरता है पूरी दुनिया शोक मनाती है, लोग पढ़ते हैं उसकी कविताएं, सैन फ्रांसिस्को से सेनेगल की गलियों तक बच्चे नाचते हैं उसके गानों पर, जवान रैपर्स इकट्ठे होते हैं वॉशिंगटन डीसी में और पेरिस में गायक एकत्र होते हैं कवि के सम्मान में। जब एक कवि मरता है उसका पहला प्यार ब्रुकलिन की कोने द्वीप पर अब एक बूढ़ी विधवा अटलांटिक महासागर की ओर देखती है और रोती है। तालमूद पढ़ने वाले विद्यार्थी वर्सावा में बैठकर दोहराते हैं कदीशा। जब एक कवि मरता है रोम के सेंट पीटर्स चर्च में बजती है घंटियां, लासा के भिक्षु करते हैं उपवास, बनारस के योगी बैठ जाते हैं पूजनीय मुद्राओं में, भक्त लगाते हैं डुमकी गंगा में, सूफी करते हैं जिक्र कैरों में और चिड़िया उड़ जाती है उत्तर को अकेली। जब एक कवि मरता है दो देशों के बीच सदियों से चलते आ रहे युद्धों पर लग जाता है विराम। पूरे विश्व की माताएं कवि पर रखती है अपने बच्चों के नाम। जब एक कवि मरता है बगदाद की लड़की रोपती है गुलाब की झाड़ और अरब में पढ़ती है कवि की कविताएं और वही लड़की टोक्यो में वही कविताएं पढ़ती है जापानी में। जब एक कवि मरता है पूरा विश्व शोक मनाता है। थैंक यू। We now call upon our esteemed guest poet, Zolani Mkiva from Africa. In the post-apartheid South Africa, spoken word poetry has emerged as one of the most powerful channels of expression for cultural and political criticism for performing artists. Among them, Easy Bongo, that is praise poetry, represents one of the most ancient and significant forms of oral expressions in the history. Mr. Zolani is one of the most acclaimed contemporary performer of this art of Easy Bongo, which is a powerful voice in preserving this ancient tradition. He had the honor of praising former President Nelson Mandela at a welcome home rally in the then Transkei. Consolidating this role, Mkiva was then appointed Imongi Yezue, that is, poet to the nation. He was also later on the praise singer at Nelson Mandela's presidential inauguration in 1994 and subsequently became the president's poet laureate. He served as a master of ceremonies for the International Conference of Writers at the Horst der World, that is House of World Cultures in Berlin, and participated in numerous local and international events. He also produces music with other African artists throughout the continent and is also involved in African regeneration and revival of moral values. Zolani, welcome.
Thank you very much for that wonderful welcome and introduction. I want to take this opportunity to greet all the fellow poets first and foremost who are in this platform. It is a great honor and a humbling experience for me to share this platform at this time when the world is in between roads and in between times because of the major challenges that we are confronted with. I want to say thank you to Rati for the extraordinary invitation that he has extended to me to be part of Kritya International Poetry Festival, my first virtual poetry engagement at this level. And secondly, I want to also appreciate the role that is played by those that are not most of the time recognized and acknowledged for the contribution that they make in events of this magnitude. Those who work behind the scenes, assisting Rati, the entire team of Kritya. I am humbled. Let me do my first poem entitled Son of the Soil. And I hope that you have made available the translation for those who may not understand English. And my poetry is basically delivered in the majority of cases in my native language, my mother tongue of isiXhosa, which is a clicking language. And I come from the Eastern Cape part of the country, which is by the Indian Ocean coast. I want to do Son of the Soil, and I will simplify the rendition of this poem. I am the son of the soil, a brother to the daughters of the land. I do not have perfumed lips, but I speak the truth. I do not have cat eyes, but I can see the true colors of the continent. I do not have dog nose, but I can smell and distinguish between carbon monoxide and oxygen. I am the son of the soil, a brother to the daughters of the land. I do not have donkey ears, but I can see what makes sense and what makes sense. I am the son of the soil, a brother to the daughters of the land. I may not have a big heart, but I do have passion. Passion for my people, passion for my country, passion for my continent, and passion for humanity at large. I am the son of the soil. I am the filament of freedom. I am the root of reconciliation. I am the calyx of consciousness. I am the corolla of people's cause. I am the pistil of peace. I am the pollen of prosperity. I am the son of the soil, a brother to the daughters of the land. Heartically, I am the son of the soil, and rootically, I am the brother to the daughters of the land. Son of the soil, son of the soil. I will now do my second intervention. My second rendition would be entitled God Bless Africa. And this poem is entitled God Bless Africa, but the expression goes beyond Africa. it carries the same meaning as saying God bless the world. And we are saying that for many reasons, because we need to heal the world for it to become a better place for everybody. We need to better the lives of all our people wherever we are, and ensure that we are all equal before the eyes of God. We are all equal before the eyes of humanity. We are all equal in the manner in which we do things. There is no tomorrow without a yesterday. There is either no tonight without a yesternight. The bones of our ancestors are vibrating. The waves of our oceans are reverberating, propagating gogabilities, the possibilities of flexibilities. A child was born some time ago, dissocialized and disorientated, bad-mannered and bad-natured. Today is the rebirth of the child. Today, Africa is born again, ready to be issued with a new birthday certificate. The lotion for motion has been issued. Let us be the thinkers of the great thoughts. Let us be the doers of the great deeds. Achievement never yet was given to the people as a gift, but as a reward, bravely earned through enormous hard work. Let us tell the whole humanity that Africa is the mother continent. Let us tell the whole world that Africa is the continent of the future. Tell them tell. Tell them that them tell, them that tell them that Africa is the continent of the future. Africa Maluju, Africa Harambe, Africa Uhuru. God bless Africa. God bless humanity. God bless the universe. I thank you very much. Rati, I was not quite sure if I was given an opportunity to do more, or we can do less with more.
No, you can read one more poem, and I will be happy if you can read in your language. At least we can hear your language, because I know that you sing so well. So can you sing one poetry, please?
I will do one poem which is entitled Umbombai in my language.
Yes, please, please, please.
Snyokolondwana, snyokolondwana zisi bailam. Ilanga liandishiya kukude bhakuba. Sivakele isikhalo sabantwana beAfrika. Bemchila bemyesha umbombayi. Besithi xhosa indaba zolwimi. Wena wawukhe waye ephipha isevova isiphantsi komkhono. Uyawumazi umbombayi. CB James Silakanombinja. Bantonville Ndandentile. Choice assorted, Chase asawuthetha. Umbombayi ke lowo. Mbombayi usidyobhile ngentlongo isizwe. Mbombayi usintlokothisile isintu. Wena mbombayi ungunobenani. Wena mbombayi ungusisimangandini. Umbombayi wasibiza ngoba ngumongameli kanti ngusibangandini. Wasibiza ngoba inkulumbuso kanti inkubabulongwe. Wathi usiphathele inkululeko kanti ucela inkunkuma. Wathi usinika ilizwe kanti ucela ilishwa. Yiyo loo nto sisithi umbombayi uliqalekisile ilizwe lakokwethu. Wenzeka umrhanqolo wacela inyoko wathi jikelele ngqu. Yiyo loo nto xa kunamhlanje sisithi ginyani noba kuyarharha. Akurharhi kuba kukrarha, kukrarha kuba nirhorha. Ngumbombayi ke lowo. Kuba kaloku besingamaxhaphethu izinxiba mchaka. Kuxoxwa ngengxoxo-gxebe ngoxolo. Evuya amagxagxa kube esixhaphaza. Unxubile umzi kaXhosa kuba ubuxhatshazwa. Yiyo loo nto sisithi xa kunamhlanje mbudede kambombayi ibhubhile. Wehla umbombayi wehlele emazantsi. Wenyuka umbombela wenyukela phezulu. Yiyo loo nto sisithi ngolo hlobo sizibonile iinkokheli zenkululeko zingqawuza. Zingena kumagumbi nemijelo enkululeko. Zixela izikhakhamela zikhakhamela. Kuba kaloku ngabantwana bomgquba, ngabantwana begazi. Benika isikhokhelo, benika intabiso. Besithi eli lizwe maliye phambili. Wenyuka umbombela wenyuka. Sawabona Mandela bengena bengqawuza epalamente. Sawabona Sisulu. Sawabona manina. Sawabona abantu abatsha. Yiyo loo nto sisithi ngolo hlobo. Yenyuka njalo. Yenyuka njalo mbombela. Halala mbombela. Halala. Ndegam. Yo. Thank you very much. I will take that as my last poem. And basically, that poem entails a brief summary of a history where we come from as a people, where we suffered through an apartheid and an evil system, but we had managed to transform that historical experience into a reconciled society where diversity is appreciated. And today we are united as one people under the theme of the rainbow people of God. And in this sense, we say bitter things have been done to us, and bitter as a lemon. But what we did, we took the lemon itself and made lemonade. And then out of that bitterness, we have transformed. And today, South Africa is one of the countries that is looked at for having gone through a process of reconciliation wherein we agreed that we can live together side by side harmoniously. We can differ, but we don't have to be divided. We can be different, but we don't have to live separately. We take stock of the beauty of different cultural ramification, and out of that, we can create a beautiful spectra for the whole world to see. So today, many peoples of the world, they come to South Africa to benchmark on the settlement that was agreed on, which is called the negotiated settlement for freedom and democracy. We can still do better. We are where we are now through the wisdom of the likes of Nelson Mandela. Hence, he is espoused by the whole world as a leader who has managed to create a miracle of a South Africa, which is now known as a new South Africa. Thank you once more for having given me an opportunity to be part of this. And I wish you all the best. I wish you resounding success in this International Poetry Festival. And may you continue to do the good work, not only for your people in India, but for the world over. I know your contribution, even in the world poetry movement. You are making very robust and humble contributions, and you are acknowledged. And thank you for having us. And I hope that you will also, in the future, include more young people from the margins of society so that we can hear all those views. To the rest of the poets that are in this platform, I wish you all the best in your lives. Please keep safe. We are facing a common enemy in the form of the pandemic herein after called the coronavirus. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Zolani. She will read one poem in Hindi for some Hindi audience, and you can state it that here. I know you are very busy. I know.
Thank you, Zolani, for that great poetry from the land of Nelson Mandela, the poetry and language of rainbow people of God. Thank you. I will read translation of the poem Sons of the Soil by Rati Saxena. मैं बेटा हूं इस जमीन का, भाई हूं जमीन की बेटियों का। मेरे होठ खुशबूदार नहीं फिर भी सच बोलते हैं। मेरे होठ खुशबूदार नहीं फिर भी सच बोलते हैं। मेरी नाक कुत्ते की नाक सी नहीं है। मैं ऑक्सीजन और कार्बन में अंतर महसूस कर सकता हूं। मेरे हाथ मुलायम हाथ नहीं, मैं फिर भी काम कर सकता हूं अपना, अपने लोगों को शर्म से बचा सकता हूं। मेरा दिल बहुत बड़ा नहीं, फिर भी मुझ में प्यार के प्रति जुनून है। जुनून मेरे लोगों के लिए, जुनून मेरे देश के लिए, जुनून मेरे महाद्वीप के लिए। मैं बेटा हूं इस जमीन का, भाई हूं जमीन की बेटियों का। मैं तना हूं समाज का, सामंजस्य की मूल, आजादी का सूत्र, चेतना का पुष्प दल, मानवीय चेतना का परिणाम हूं, शांति की मूल योनि हूं, समुद्रता का पराग कण हूं, समस्या निदान हूं। मैं दिल से धरती का बेटा हूं। मैं मूल रूप से भाई हूं जमीन की बेटियों का, धरती का बेटा, धरती का बेटा। थैंक यू।
Thank you, Zolani.
Our next poet for the session is Katharina Sarika from Montenegro, southeastern Europe. Katharina is a professor of Slavic literature and philosophy, civil rights activist, and writer of socially engaged literature created for performance and theater. She has published 12 books, most of which were translated, awarded, and represented in numerous literary portals and platforms. Welcome, Katharina.
Thank you for invitation. I'm so proud to be with you today and so delighted by the previous poets, especially the poet from Africa. I'm in love in that continent. And so sorry that my translated poems for today are a little bit different and shorter than that I usually write an epic poetry, but it's okay. I can read them as well. My wish was to read one poem that I wrote in India while I was in Bengal Bay, but I can read it for some other time. So we have the 3 poems for today. I'm ready for them, and hello to everyone. It's amazing opportunity you give to all of us by creating this festival. So proud to be a part of it. I hope you hear me.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, she is saying yes, she can hear him.
Yeah, you can hear me. Okay. I'm a little bit confused with all these phones and computers, and hope that everything will be fine. I'm an old-fashioned lady, old school. I'm still writing on the paper in a paper book. Something's wrong?
So I will read the translation of Katharina's poem, Senseless Noise, the translation into English by Maria Diamond. Senseless noise. And you will allow the sticky
Excuse
mix
me,
of content and
excuse
envy
me.
born of...
Excuse me, is she not reading in her language? Katharina is not
she
reading.
was
She has
to
not
read.
read. She has
She
not
was
read
to
yet.
read.
I can read it on English. It's fine. And
No,
if you want to hear...
I want to hear your language, please. And she will
Okay.
read in English and all. So it is
Yes,
for
I will-
language also.
Okay.
Please.
I would love to
Okay.
read on my mother's tongue language.
Yeah, please. And give her
Thank-
which language which poem you are reading. She will read English and Hindi translation of that poem.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
Katharina, we are waiting for you to start reading your poem, Senseless Noise, in your mother tongue. Could you
Your
please do
mother.
that? Yes,
Yes, of
Senseless
course.
Noise. Please start with that.
It is my honor. I pustit ćeš na sebe ljepljive poglede, prezira i zavida, od nemoći i nevida. I očaje skupljene u grbače, izborane ruke. Pustit ćeš nevolje i muke, i svoje i tuđe. Uprtit ćeš i što moraš, i što ti drugi natovare na samare. Jednako ovdje koji svudje, na svijet bijeli. Jedan svima isti, život cip cijeli. Otimaćeš i tebi će mnogi. Samljeveni u istome mlinu, do Boga na istinu, do samoga kraja. Pa kome karta do pakla, a kome do raja. Pustit ćeš sve niz vodu, kad sve i svi na posljedku odu. I motika i kuka. Ali zapamtit ćeš samo one dane, kad sve ovo prođe, u kojima si imao sreće, da nađeš neko svoje meče, ušuškaš se pod pokrivače. I kad sve odjednom zastane i stane, postane besmislena buka. Hvala. Namaste, shukran, thank you.
Wonderful. Now, Smitha could read this poem in English. This poem is Senseless Noise.
Yes, the poem is Senseless Noise, translation into English by Maria Diamond. And you will allow the sticky looks of contempt and envy born of the blemished blindness, and despair piled up in backbone and wrinkled arms. You will allow the misfortunes and torments, yours and those of the others. You will shoulder both what you have to and what others load in your saddlebags. Equally here as everywhere else in this wide world, one and the same life for everybody, through and through. You will be seizing the life of the others, and the others will be taking it from you, ground in the same mill, till we meet our Maker, till the very end. And whoever receives the ticket to hell and whoever to heaven, we will allow everything down the water when everything and everyone flow away and leave every Tom, Dick, and Harry. But you'll remember only those silent days when all of this is over, in which you were lucky to find your own teddy to cuddle under the covers, and everything suddenly pauses and stops becoming a senseless noise. Katerina, we request you to read your next poem, please.
Katrina, your next
In your
poem,
language.
Hormone Theft. Your next poem that you will read in your mother tongue.
Hormone Theft.
Yes,
That's very
poem.
funny. Yeah,
Yes.
it's very funny. Okay. Give me just a second to find it. Yeah, on my language it means krađa hormona, hormone steal, yeah, or something like that. Volim sebe rođenu, tek protegnutu, meku, pufnu, nježno roze zaljubljenu, u poeziju, kaligrafiju i pečate u vosku topljene. I onu majicu što ima veliku tufnu po sredini, koju sam čuvala da se nasloniš kad dođeš. Volim da se vozim čunom do Beške. Pišem jeleninim stilom i izražavanja volim i slamnate šešire sa velikim obodom i ručno rađenom čipkom. Vezi miris lavande u škrinjama sa donjim rubljem. A najviše se volim kad se dosadim sebi tako rođena, pa ti ukradem hormone. Pa se šutnem pod ormar i pustim prašinu na spomenar. Obučem onu vreću za znojanje i slušalice, pa se presvučem u zmijsko telo već do naredne stanice, na kojoj tačku štiklom zabadam i nikome se ne pravdam. I ludujem i skitam i bacam laso, gonim stoku i sa svakim sam na ti. Kad odmaram se na boku po jednog ljubavnika u gradu svakom i kad me baš boli briga gdje si ti. Thank you. Hvala. On my language is hvala. Shukran. Thank you. Namaste.
We request Shelley to read out the Hindi translation of this poem. Shelley.
Thank you, Smitha. This
Thank you
poem,
very much. Namaste.
this poem, Hormone Ki Chori, Hormone Theft, is translated into Hindi by Meeta Das ji. मुझे अपने
proud.
नवजात शिशु होने से प्यार है, मुझे अपने नवजात शिशु होने से प्यार है, सिर्फ बिछाया हुआ है एक कोमल पफ जो है हल्का गुलाबी। मुझे प्यार है कविता, हस्तलिपि और टिकटों पर पिघली मोम से, और उस शर्ट से जिस पर बड़ी बिंदी बिल्कुल बीच में है, जिसे सहेज कर रखा है तुम्हारे लिए जब तुम यहाँ होंगे। मैं चाहती हूँ अपना नाव बॉस्का ले जाना और राजकुमारी जिलेना की तरह लिखना। मुझे लेटना भी पसंद है और सीखों से बनी वह टोपी जिसका गोलाकार लंबा किनारा है, और हाथ से बनी फीतों की कढ़ाई, और अधोवस्त्र छाती में लेवेंडर की खुशबू। किंतु तब मुझे सबसे ज्यादा अच्छा लगता है जब मैं अपने आप से ऊब जाती हूँ और बन जाती हूँ नवजात शिशु और चुरा लेती हूँ आपके हार्मोन्स, और मैं खुद को लात मारने लगती हूँ अलमारी के नीचे और धूल को स्क्रैप बुक पर गिरने देती हूँ। मैं पसीने वाला थैला और हेडफोन्स को पहन लेती हूँ और मैं सांप के शरीर में बदल जाती हूँ नए पन्ने के खुलने से पहले, जिस पर अपनी एड़ी से पूर्ण विराम लगाने का मुझे भरोसा है। और मैं किसी को जवाब नहीं देती। मैं मौज और मस्ती में घूमती फिरती रहती हूँ। मैं रस्सी फेंकती हूँ, मवेशियों को चराती घुमाती हूँ और मैं हर किसी से परिचित हूँ जब मैं अपने कुल्हों के बल लेटकर आराम फरमाती हूँ हर शहर में एक प्रेमी के साथ, और मुझे सच में परवाह नहीं है कि तुम कहाँ होंगे।
Thank you.
Namaste.
What a brilliant poem.
Sounds perfect on Hindi. Oh my God.
Shelley, may we request her to read the next
Yes.
poem?
Okay,
Yes.
Katharina, we request you to read your third poem, titled The Funny Poem, in your mother tongue, please.
Okay. Smiješna pjesma. Dobro je. I samo mi se smije. I ništa mi nije. I samo mi se pjeva. I igra. I skače. Ali ne stoga što sam lakonoga, lakomislena. Naprotiv. A ti si tako ozbiljan i siv. Prava baba roga. Uvijek na oštrici brijača, ivicama plača, ko je prav, a ko je kriv. Šta se, a šta ne smije. A možda su moje misli dublje i teže. Možda bi ti razbile sve tasove ravnoteže, da ih pustim. Dosta s tim, ne zanima me, ni da zaustim. Dobro je i kad nije. I ništa mi nije. Samo mi se smije. Samo mi se smije. Thank you.
Shelley, please.
Yes. इस कविता का शीर्षक है अजब कविता और इसका अनुवाद भी मीता दास जी ने किया है। यह अच्छा है कि मुझे हंसते रहने जैसा महसूस होता है और बगैर किसी कारण ही मुझे केवल गाने, नाचने और कूदने जैसा महसूस होता है। इसलिए नहीं कि मैं फुर्तीली हूं या कि चंचल हूं, परंतु इसके विपरीत, जबकि आप कितने संगीन और धूरस हो। एक असली डरावने मानव हमेशा एक उस तरह के ब्लेड पर बस जैसे यूं ही रो लिए। कौन सही है और कौन गलत, क्या कर सकते हो, क्या नहीं कर सकते। पर शायद मेरे विचार ज्यादा गहरे और वजनी हैं। मुमकिन है अगर मैंने उन्हें जाने दिया तो मैं तुम्हारे बैलेंस ट्रे के टुकड़े टुकड़े कर डालूंगी। ये सब बहुत हो चुका, मुझे अब कोई परवाह नहीं, बल्कि अब कोई बहस भी नहीं। यह अच्छा है जबकि ये है भी नहीं और मेरे साथ कुछ भी गलत नहीं है, बस मेरा हंसने का मन है।
Namaste. I'm so proud to hear. Thank you very much. You make me so proud for this translation on Hindi. So thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Katharina, for that enchanting poetry in your language. Very musical.
It was very musical. It was very funny. It's something like between man and woman, to changing the roles, because my Montenegro here country is still very machoistic, patriarchal and strong, and I'm fighting for the freedom for all of us to be equal, as well as women, as voices of my minority. So this was like some parody style. I also have a much deeper and social engagement poetry, but it was all too long for translation, and why not? We need a lot of laughing these days, because all of our Mother Earth is getting deeper and deeper in all that things that happen to us all over the world, civil wars and catastrophes and epidemics. And just want to tell you again, God bless you all, and hope one day we will stand together and be equal, all of us. Thank you. Namaste. Shukran.
Thank you, Katharina. Thank you. And thank you, Shelley, for that wonderful and engaging rendition.
Pleasure, my pleasure.
Thank you, Shelley.
We now call upon our next poet, Ming D. Ming D is a poet and translator from China, currently living in California, USA. She was a co-moderator for Xinghai Festival 2011 to 15 and a co-organizer of international translation workshops in Beijing from 2011 to 2017. She has published 6 books of poetry and several books of translation and won the Lishan Poetry Award Translation in China in 2021. She has edited and co-translated several anthologies, including New Cathay Contemporary Chinese Poetry and New Poetry from China 1917 to 2017. Welcome, Ming.
For translating my poems into Hindi, and it's a pleasure to read with old friends and new friends. I'll read the first poem in Chinese, my native language. 洛杉矶第一居民，他们与大象共享这片土地，他们与海狮共享这片海洋，他们狩猎捕鱼，看海鸟飞来飞去。他们与风共享太阳和月亮，大象死了，海狮死了，他们活了1万多年。出马圣人，来自海洋，狩猎捕鱼13600年。他们与海鸥和老鹰为伴，在1万多年的海涛之上，大象死了，海狮死了，他们幸存，躲过地震和沙尘暴。出马圣人，头上戴着羽毛。太阳和月亮照耀在脸上。Thank you.
Thank you, Ming.
Translation.
Very musical voice of your language. I now present the translation of this poem by Rati Saxena. लॉस एंजलिस के मूल निवासी, उन्होंने हाथियों के साथ भूमि साझा की, उन्होंने समुद्रों सिंहों के साथ समुद्र को साझ किया, उन्होंने मछली का पीछा किया जो उछलकर फिसल गई, उन्होंने सूर्य और चंद्रमा को हवा के साथ साझा किया। हाथियों की मौत हो गई है, समुद्र सिंह लुप्त हो गए हैं, वे चुमांश जन 10,000 साल जीवित रहे, समुद्र में आखेट करते मछली पकड़ते हुए 10 बरस वे यहाँ समुद्री पंछी और चीलों के साथ रहे। हर बरस 10,000 लहरों के लिए हाथियों की मौत हो गई है, समुद्री सिंह लुप्त हो गए। 10,000 वर्षों की लहरों के लिए हाथियों की मौत हो गई, समुद्रों की लुप्त हो गई है। वे भूकंप और रेतीले तूफानों से बच गए हैं। चुमांश लोग, सिर पर पंख का मुकुट, चेहरों पर सूर्य और चंद्रमा की आभा। चुमांश लोग, सिर पर पंख का मुकुट, चेहरों पर सूर्य और चंद्रमा की आभा। Ming?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for reading the translation by Rati. It's beautiful Hindi. It was a poem about indigenous people in Los Angeles, where I live now. The next poem is about from here back home to China, carrying my father's ashes. He passed away last year during the pandemic. 航海，长江曾是海洋，我似乎有远古印象。我划着独木舟，顺着暗流，顺着软流，顺着风向，瞬间到了加利福尼亚，才知道所有的江和海洋相连相通。而此时武汉却显得遥远，山峡在烟云中，悬关在峭壁上， 仿佛长江曾经在天上如一道彩虹，一条大虫奔跑如夸父追日，超过了地球自转的速度。而此时我等待新冠退潮，绿色植物飘起，我将携带你的骨灰踏浪回家。我伸出手臂如一张风帆。Thank you. Back to Kritya.
Yes. Ming, while we join you in grief
Thank
and
you.
prayers, I take this opportunity to present the English translation of this very heart-touching poem, Sailing. I never knew that Yangtze River flew into the ocean until I sailed across the Pacific. How quickly I reached California through a warm current, my tomol canoe in the perfect wind, and how far away it seems now to reach back to Three Gorges, where ancient coffins nailed on the high cliffs by the river Yangtze must be running like a rainbow thousand tides of years ago. I wait for the coronavirus to subside so I can take your ashes home, my arm stretching out like a sail. Ming,
Thank
please
you.
please let us have your next poem.
Thank you. I'll read the next poem. 寻找玛雅. Reading Chinese and you'll read the Hindi translation by Raji. Thank you. 寻找玛雅。从前有一朵巨大的云，父亲挥手切成天和地。从前地上有风和尘，母亲把灰尘捏成人。要有光，于是有了光；要有字，于是有了花朵字、石头字。从前花朵上飞出一条鱼，飞在天空和地球间。从前鱼嘴里飞出一个太阳，又一个太阳，又一个太阳，又一个太阳。石头变成动物，不能忍受太阳的热，于是父亲踢足球，踢走太阳，留下一个空中讲故事。从前有个故事，玛雅姐姐和我在岩石上刻字，竹子上刻字，棉花和丝绸结绳祭祀。她喜欢给花朵画刺，给鱼鸟画足，所有生物都有翅膀，飞来飞去。她想让它们留在地上，于是地震，土地裂开，裂成大陆和岛屿。我看见它越飘越远，直到一个海洋横隔在我们中间。几千年飞过山，几千年飞过水，文字让我苟且不朽。我去日本找它，看见很多相似的字，但它不在。我去马来西亚、印度尼西亚、菲律宾、夏威夷、太平洋岛屿都有它的痕迹，直到我来到复活节岛，从那里到智利和秘鲁。我在秘鲁留下线索，然后北上，最后在危地马拉和墨西哥看见他们后裔在洞穴和贫民窟，他们遗失了他的花鸟字，他们用罗马字母书写，他们谈论诗歌，仿佛诗歌始于西班牙，他们忽略自己的口述历史，忽略自己的古代文字。玛雅姐姐死了，我的一半死了。闭嘴！我咳着从家里来，吼了一嗓子，讲你自己的故事。我说，这当然是我自己的故事。我是中国人、苏美尔人、埃及人、非洲人、祖鲁人、玛雅人、爱斯基摩人、沙马人、沙米人、切罗基人、纳瓦赫人、圣露西亚人。我要么什么也不是，要么是鸟、鱼、天空、海洋、彩虹、雨、雨林、风，所有风物于一身。Thank you.
Thank you, Ming. Thank you for that wonderful poem, which resonates the Sanskrit phrase enshrined in the Rig Veda, Vasudeva Kudumbagam. The phrase means the world is one family. I proceed to read the Hindi translation of Ming's poem by Rati Saxena. The poem's title is माया की तलाश में। एक वक्त की बार है, किसी अनजानी जगह एक बहुत बड़ा बादल था। मेरे पिता ने अपना हाथ लहराया और इसे आकाश और धरती में विभक्त कर दिया। एक समय की बात है, धरती में केवल धूल थी और पृथ्वी, एक बार पृथ्वी पर केवल धूल थी। अब रोशनी की जरूरत थी, रोशनी आ गई। अब शब्दों की जरूरत थी, फूलों और पत्थरों के शब्द आ गए। फिर कभी एक मछली, एक सूरज बाहर निकल के कोई दूसरा सूरज, पत्थर जानवरों में बदल गए। जिन्हें सूरज की गर्मी बर्दाश्त नहीं हुई, पिता ने सूरज को फुटबॉल की तरह ठोकर लगाई। कहानी सुनाने के लिए किसी को आसमान में छोड़ दिया। एक बार एक कहानी, माया की बहन और मैंने चट्टान पर शब्द अंकित किए, बांस और रेशम से शब्दों ने सिल्क और सूत बनाया। उसे फूलों पर दांत अंकित करना और पैरों पर पंछी अंकित करना अच्छा लगता था। सभी जीवों के पंखों थे, लेकिन वह चाहती थी कि वे धरती पर ही रहे। तभी भूकंप आया, जिसने धरती को जमीन और पानी में विभक्त किया, द्वीप और महाद्वीप। मैंने उसे दूर जाते देखा, जब तक एक समंदर था हमारे बीच में। साल दर साल बीतते गए, लेकिन शब्द रह गए। मैं जापान के लिए उड़ान भरती हूँ और कुछ सामान सा देखती हूँ, लेकिन वह नहीं दिखती। मैं मलेशिया, इंडोनेशिया, हवाई और दूसरे द्वीपों में जाती हूँ, प्रशांत सागर के सभी द्वीप, बड़े या छोटे, और देखे चट्टानों पर शब्द, विभिन्न आकृतियों के शब्द। मैं ईस्टर द्वीप गई, वहां से पेरू चिली गई। मैंने उसके लिए कुछ सूत्र छोड़ दिए जिसे वह मुझे खोज सके। मैं उतर गई, फिर ग्वाटेमाला और मेक्सिको गई। मैं उसके वंशजों के गुफाओं और इगतियों में देखा, लेकिन वे उसके शब्द ही भूल चुके थे। फूलों के शब्द, मछलियों के शब्द। बहन माया मर चुकी थी, मेरा आधा भाग मर गया। सूर्य के पत्थरों के शब्द, बहन माया मर चुकी है, मेरे आधा मर चुका है। चुप रहो, डेरेक कैब्रियन कहते हैं, अपनी कहानी कहो। महोदय, यह मेरी ही कहानी है। मैं माया हूँ, सुमेरियन, चीनी, ताइवानी, जुलू, इनुट, स्वामी, चेरोकी, मिस्र, सेंट लूसियन। मैं या तो कोई नहीं हूं या मैं हूं। पक्षी, मछली, आकाश, सागर, हवा, बादल, बारिश, इंद्रधनुष, सभी एक देह में ही है।
Thank you again for reading the translation by Rati, and thanks to Rati again for translating so many poems and organizing the festival. I still remember attending Kritya Festival 10 years ago in India. That was an unforgettable trip to the country, my neighbor. The last poem is about my hometown. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The last poem is about my hometown in China, which is the place where this pandemic started. So it's a very unfortunate thing, but it kind of started a new form of life that we meet online. So it's called Wuhan. Everybody knows about this place now, Wuhan. The province is called Hubei.
Ming, I'm really sorry.
Mindy, can you read this in English, Mindy? This poem, Wuhan poem?
Oh, okay.
That will save the time because
Okay.
Víctor is waiting.
Okay. Well, I will skip the Chinese and read the English. Okay. Surprise. Okay. Kingdom Chu. You rose from nowhere like a tree with mysterious roots. Some even say you came from West Asia, chasing the sun eastward. What made you and your tribe settle in my hometown Hubei is even more mysterious. Your faces already faded out, become clear only in the light from tree coronas now in masks. After 100 years digging, even words have become fossils. All the bats flying out of archaeological sites with viruses wiping out the already long-lived mankind. You disappear in history. Your only pyramid is all 2 oranges, and each orange is by Qiyuan, a small sun above the Yangtze River. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mindy, for those wonderful poems. Now we call upon our very, very senior poet, Víctor Rodríguez Nunes. He is one of Cuba's most outstanding and celebrated contemporary writers, with over 60 collections of his poetry appearing across the world. He has been the recipient of major awards throughout the Spanish-speaking countries, including in 2015 the coveted Lowell Prize, the highest honor an unpublished book of poetry can receive in the region. His selected poems have been translated into Arabic, Chinese, English, French, German, Hebrew, Italian, Macedonian, Serbian, Swedish, and Vietnamese. He has been a riveting presence at most of the major international literary festivals for over a decade, having read in more than 40 countries. In India, his anthology In Verse, edited and translated into English by Catherine Heden, was published by Poetry-Wala from Mumbai in 2019. He divides his time between Gambia, Ohio, where he is currently professor of Spanish at Kenyon College, and Havana, Cuba. Welcome, Víctor.
Thank you. Thank you, Rati Sasena, and all your team that make this wonderful Kritya International Poetry Festival possible. It's an honor to be part of this reading. I will read 4 poems in Spanish, and there will be translation in some cases into English and in other cases into Hindi. Entrada. No sé por qué camino, pero he llegado aquí, hasta este raro sitio sin casas ni paisaje, este lugar desnudo de las piedras al alma, donde el mundo germina. Quizás también tú llegas siguiendo ese camino, en esta vida harta de aciertos y certezas, solo el error nos une. La poesía es el reino de los equivocados.
Can I read the translation, Víctor?
Yes, I think so.
Yes. The translation, the title is प्रवेश. मैं नहीं जानता किस रास्ते चलते हुए पहुंच गया हूं यहाँ, इस अनजानी जगह जहां नहीं कोई घर या वादी, चट्टानों से आत्मा तक, यहाँ नग्न स्थान जहां विश्व जन्म लेता है. शायद तुम भी यहाँ आ गए हो. इस रास्ते का अनुसरण करते हुए सफलता और निश्चितता के तृप्त जीवन में सिर्फ गलती शामिल है. कविता संसार है कसूरवारों का. Yes, Víctor, please read your next.
Yes, bogotano. Yo juego fútbol con mis asesinos, les disputo el balón, gano tiempo y espacio, arriesgo esta jugada individual. Arracimados sobre el pasto tenaz de este parque escogido, los gamines se sacuden el polvo que Dios echó en su alma y se bañan con sol. El de ruana molida busca en la bolsa plástica el aliento de la felicidad, y el que tiene las costillas al aire caza como un gorrión migajitas de pan entre la hierba. Yo juego fútbol con mis asesinos, me pasaron la bola y pruebo el arco. Hay más niebla en los huesos que en las calles.
Thank you. The translation of the poem goes, Bogotano, for Gustavo Adolfo Garcias. I play soccer with my killers, vie for the ball, make up time and space, risk this lone move, clustered together over the insistent turf of this chosen field. The gamins shake off the dust God casts on their souls and wash up with sun. One in a tattered poncho searches for a breath of happiness in a plastic bag, and another ribs jutting out, heads for breadcrumbs in the grass. Like a sparrow, I play soccers with my killers. They pass me the ball, and I try for a goal. There's more mist in their bones than in the streets. Yes, Victor, please read the next.
Hipótesis. Pensaba Ptolomeo que el mundo era como el ojo de ciertas mujeres, una esfera de húmedos cristales en que cada astro describe una órbita perfecta sin pasiones, mareas o catástrofes. Luego vino Copérnico, sabio que cambió senos por palomas, cosenos por espantos, y la pupila del sol fue el centro del universo, mientras Giordano Bruno crepitaba para felicidad de curas y maridos. Entonces Galileo, estudiando a fondo el corazón de las muchachas, naufragó en el buen vino, luz aglutinada por el sol, violó estrellas que no eran de cine, y antes de morir sobre la cola de un cometa sentenció que el amor era infinito. Kant, por su parte, no supo nada de mujeres, preso en la mariposa de los cálculos en polen metafísico, y a Hegel, tan abstracto, le resultó el asunto demasiado absoluto. Por mi parte, propongo al siglo XX una hipótesis simple que los críticos llamarán romántica. Oh muchacha que lees este poema, el mundo gira alrededor de ti.
Yes. The poem is Hypothesis. Ptolemy thought the world was like certain women's eyes, a sphere of damp crystal where each star traces a perfect orbit with no passion tide or catastrophe. Copernicus came along, traded sines for doubts, cosines for fright, and the sun's pupil became the center of the universe, while Giordano Bruno crackled to the delight of husbands and priests. Then Galileo, probing deeply into young girls' hearts, shipwrecked on good wine, light, agglutinated by the sun, and before dying on a comet tail, declared love to be infinite. Kant, in turn, knew nothing of women, prisoner in the butterfly of calculations, in metaphysical pollen, and for Hegel, so abstract, the problem was excessively absolute. As for me, I propose to the 20th century a simple hypothesis. Critics will call romantic, oh, young girl who reads this poem, the world revolves around you. Beautiful poem.
Thank you. And the last one, drama de Marco Polo. Algo he visto del mundo, las tormentas de polvo de Managua, la nieve ya desnuda en los pirales del camino a Smolian, y cómo discuten las banderas en la torre de la Universidad de Puerto Rico. Algo he visto del mundo, las piedras encantadas de Palenque, la bahía de miel que olvidó el verano en Ponta Delgada y aquella plaza roja pintada por Kandinsky. Algo he visto del mundo y eso ahonda mi pena. Nada me pertenece. Muchas gracias.
Well, the poem मार्को पोलो की दुविधा. मैंने इस दुनिया में कुछ देखा है, मनागुआ के रेतीले तूफान, स्मोलियन को जाती सड़क पर चीड़ की कतार को ढकती बर्फ, पुएर्तो रिको विश्वविद्यालय के टावर पर लड़ते झंडे. मैंने इस दुनिया में कुछ देखा है, पलटते हुए जादुई चट्टाने, पोंता देल धागा की गर्मियों की भूली, शहद की घाड़ी और कांदिस्की द्वारा चित्रित लाल चौकोर. मैंने इस दुनिया में कुछ देखा है और यहाँ सिर्फ मेरे दुख का गहराता है. मैंने इस दुनिया में कुछ देखा है और यह सिर्फ मेरे दुख को गहराता है कि इसमें मेरा कुछ भी नहीं. Thank you. Thank you, Víctor, for the beautiful poetry in your mother tongue. Now we call upon Shelley. Shelly Bhoil is an Indian writer, poet, and scholar on Tibet. She has published two poetry books, An Ember from a Pyre and Another one,
Preposition
yes, which is forthcoming, edited the reference book New Narratives of Exile Tibet and co-edited Tibetan Subjectivities on the Global Stage and edited 2 journals, Tibetan Writings in India for Muse India and Tibetan Exile Poetry in Brazilian Portuguese translation for Cadernos. Shelley lives in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Shelley, welcome.
Thank you so much, Smitha. Since we are over time, so I'll straight go into my poems. The first poem that I want to read is titled Nothing to Fear. I wrote this poem for my son Amog when he was 5-year-old, but I found myself rereading this poem, revisiting this poem in the last 1 year because I was very unwell. Sometimes I had false alarms and I had some grave health issues. And in this 1 year time, I would sleep with just one prayer that God just give me 10 more years so that my son is at least adult to be by himself if you have to take me away, you know. So this poem is for my son, but I think it's more for my own self. It's titled Nothing to Fear for Amog. There is nothing to fear, my little one. Everything comes around, from water to dust, betrayal to trust. You have to learn to recognize a small alphabet A and distinguish it from the capital A, observing the pressure on the fingers that write. Trace you must contours on the bark you lean on to, and it will all come to you. Do not look for us when we are not around. Do not look for us when we are not around, for we are but the moon. We are but the moon quivering upon the night's lake, and the puppet shadows appearing, disappearing beyond us. We are the trees. We are the trees that long for the roots as much yearn the high sky. Sleep you must, my child, under the warm blanket of your skin, kissing the air deep, and wake up with arms open like sun rays, taking the world in your warm embrace. The second poem is titled A Small Dream. As Smitha introduced, I'm a Tibetologist. And when I tell people this thing here in Brazil, the first question that I get is that, so have you met the Dalai Lama? And my answer is yes, of course, I have seen the Dalai Lama in gatherings in huge crowds, but I've never had a private audience with the Dalai Lama. And some of them find it very strange because I work for the Tibetan exile government and they feel that I should be meeting the Dalai Lama. Yes, maybe I can request for a private audience of the Dalai Lama, but those who know me well, they know that I'm not a kind of person who believes in backstage entries and some kind of something we call safarish. So this poem is that kind of a poem where I talk about how I wish to meet the Dalai Lama. It's titled A Small Dream. I'm also going to read its Portuguese translation because it is written for the audience in Brazil. And this poem is yet a draft, but I'm reading it nonetheless. A small dream. A small dream, or perhaps it's a big one, to bypass all the backdoor entries and lose myself once again in the nondescript anonymity of the crowd of seekers wearing nothing but my soul upon my sleeves and the sparkle of this rich dream in my eyes, when all bow down with the lightness of the elements of my humble being, may I get to hold just once in this lifetime. May I get to hold just once in this lifetime the hands of the ocean of compassion, His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. Now, I wish to read this poem in Portuguese. Pequeno sonho, ou talvez grande sonho, para eliminar todas as entradas dos fundos é me perder mais uma vez na indescritível graça de anonimidade da multidão dos que buscamos, apenas com a vestes de alma e o brilho deste rico sonho nos olhos, quando tudo se curva com a leveza dos elementos deste humilde ser. Será que consigo, ao menos uma vez na vida, apertar as mãos do oceano da compaixão, da sua santidade, o Dalai Lama. The last poem that I'm going to read now is called A Dream of a Poem. This poem and many of these poems in my first collection of poems, An Ember from a Pyre, that deal with language is actually my it reflects my anxiety with language, and it's maybe my way of overcoming my language neurosis. I have dyslexia, moderate level, and it's been very troublesome at certain points of my life. But now I have learned to put in my 200% in language.
Leave my thing.
I'm sorry? Okay. I dream of a poem. I dream of a poem about words without words. I dream of a poem about words without words, like a primitive thought unborn in the awareness of language, then grammar. But a deciduous pathos at every stung, at every step, but a deciduous pathos at every step on every tongue, dangling out of aporia. Once you step on your God, your primitive thought of the universe, a mega poem by the creator, a mega poem by the creator that fathoms deeper than depth of a poet's dreams, spread across the lindy skies beyond the bedlam breadth of our recurrent lives. I dream of a poem about words without words. Thank you. Thank you, Smitha. Thank you, Rati ma'am. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shelley, for those enthralling poems and bilingual. Thank you so much. We now call upon Rati ma'am to
Thank you very
share
much. Such a big feast of poetry. Every word and every line was feast for me and for our audience. If they hear, if they use it and they use as a therapy. Fantastic poetry session is this. So congratulations, Smitha. This is your last session, and I think you are satisfied with your such a great poets are in your sessions. Víctor, you are great. Arundhati, she is our award winner poet, and she is such a beautiful, great poet. And Ming D is a beautiful poet from which, and she is not only poet, but she is combined the West and East very beautifully. For years and years, I see that. And Sujata, such a fantastic poet, and Shelley, they are poets who had some problem and they left because Paul wanted to go early, and Zolani is a minister in his country, so you can understand his. And he asked me, "Can I go or can I stay?" I said, "No, you can go, because I understand that looking after country is more important." And then Katrina might have come from office and left it. Paul wanted to go early, so I thank to all Víctor, Arundhati, Sujata, Ming Di, and Shelley. Shelley, you actually touched my heart when you were talking to your son. Actually, you touched my heart. One thing I want to tell you that even I was in depression before the festival, in between the festival, that I was stuck, that no help was with me and I was not well. At that time, Shelley came as a what we say that pari ki tarah aayi wo, just like a fairy. And she said, "No, Ratiji, I will introduce more people who will work with you, and I will work." So she has that soul of Dalai Lama. So you touched all of us heart. And today's was a feast. I am grateful to all of you for such a wonderful poetry. Thank you. Thanks a lot.